Hey guys, this is Mark Goldberg from Mark Vlogs Watches. Thank you so much for joining me today. Before we jump into the meat and potatoes and we talk about the AD, before we jump into that, let's go ahead and get the quick fist watch check out of the way. Kind of growing a beard. Okay, let's go. And today, fellas, I am wearing a watch that I'm just so pleased to have. Speaking of the good AD, this one came from James & Sons over at Orland Park, Illinois. So my thanks to Brian and Jim. And we're going to talk a little bit more about how to buy a watch and why it's difficult these days, but I'll give you some tips. Before we move ahead with this, though, I want to talk a little bit about the difference between the good AD and the bad AD, because, I think that we're going to have to classify them. And at the risk of oversimplifying, if we're going to classify companies, people, I think it's a natural tendency for people to classify them into good. Sell the people a watch. Be the reasonable businessman. And the bad, don't do it. Sell it out the back door. We could make more money. So, you always have that yin and yang between good and bad, and that's a little bit oversimplifying. Because there is a dark overlord, that sort of has influence over all this stuff, and that is Rolex, the manufacturer in Geneva. So let's start there. Let's start with Rolex. So you have to understand Rolex is, it's not even a normal company. You got the Swatch Group, you got Richemont, you got all kinds of companies that are like normal companies. They have shareholders in stock, whether they're privately held or publicly held. But they have to, if they're public, they issue financial statements. If they're private, they do so to the family members who own the stock. But they have a prime directive, and that is to make money right now. Not that they don't want longevity, but they're going to make profits now. Rolex, different kind of an animal. It's owned by a charitable foundation in Switzerland. Talk about secrecy laws. Those guys don't have to disclose anything hardly to anybody, so we know very little. But we do know this. The gray market is going nuts. Rolex keeps creating additional demand for limited supply. Now, whether they're purposefully limiting that supply or it's just a matter of production capacity, well, we could argue about that one all day long. I think it's a little bit on purpose. But yeah, you could talk to me about that one in the comments. And the reason, by the way, I think it's a little on purpose is because they continue to advertise to the tune of $100 million a year in advertising expenses. That's $1 billion per decade. That's going to create a lot of demand. Okay, now Rolex. There's a serial number inside every watch. There's a serial number, invisible, by the way. You can see it's engraved onto the Richemont, so I can see mine. And there is, that same serial number is on the card. The instant the authorized dealer sells a Rolex, they take the card, which I'll show you in the unboxing video for this. So if you're interested in how that works, keep an eye on this channel. In fact, you should subscribe so we can do this again together, and you should like this video so that it gets a little bit of play on YouTube, okay? But there is a new style registration warranty card that comes with Rolex. Doesn't have your name on it anymore. Has the serial number barcoded on there, and it has a metallic gold edge. And the way it works is Rolex has given an iPhone, a special iPhone loaded up with their software to every AD. It's to be used only for registering watches. And by the way, it's really cool. It comes with a Rolex iPhone leather iPhone case. It's beautiful, green, embossed with the Rolex crown on the back. I'd love to be able to buy one of those, but they don't sell them. Anyway, what the AD does is they take that card, they literally just tap the iPhone, and so it's using RF frequency stuff, and then it registers that watch, and they have to do that as they sell the watch. And that instantaneously transmits itself up to Rolex. So here's what that means. Rolex knows what AD sold each watch, and they know exactly the moment when the AD sold that watch. Here's the problem. A lot of the bad AD, okay, is selling that Rolex not to an end user like you or me or a collector, okay? The bad AD is selling that to an intermediary. They go to the back door, come on in, buddy, here, got some Rolexes, and it's almost like that. And what they do is they'll sell that watch for, let's say, depending on the model, they'll sell that watch for double retail. Okay, so if they sell it at the front of the store to a customer, they get retail. If they sell it, behind the dumpster in the back door, They're going to get double retail, and then they have to register it to somebody though, okay, and then that intermediary takes and sells it right quickly into the immediate gray market, or maybe the intermediary is the gray market, and then he's just adding on another retail value, and eventually that watch, they try and sell it to people like you and me for triple retail, which is, completely nuts. By the way, retail on the Panda is $13,500, and it is worth that and every penny. In fact, it is worth a premium of some sort. Is it worth the $40,000 it's going for now on the gray market? Oh boy, I'm not the guy to say so. I wouldn't think so. It took me years to get this, but we're going to talk about the wait list a little bit and the good AD in just a moment. I just want to finish with the bad guys. How could Rolex stop the bad guys? Well, look, I do think the gray marketeers are protecting the source. The gray marketeer who is marketing the used watch is attempting to protect the bad AD who has sold the watch. And the way they do that is they are avoiding showing photographs with the serial number of the watch. They are avoiding showing the card in the photos with the serial number of the watch in place. Now, they'll tell you they do that to prevent counterfeiting. Well, we don't want these serial numbers out. That'll lead to counterfeiting. Baloney! Absolute rubbish, okay? That's just ridiculous, okay? But here's why they do it. They do it so that Rolex, who's obviously watching social media, Rolex, I will have some important advice for you since you're watching social media. I will have some important advice for you wrapped up into this video. Stay tuned, Rolex. But here's the thing. Rolex is watching social media, so where they can catch a serial number on a rehot photograph on Chrono or wherever, and where they can see a card and they can read the numbers, they can immediately trace back to those ADs, which is why that's rarely happening. The people are protecting the ill-gotten booty that they're getting out of the AD. So how could Rolex get around that? Rolex, this is what you got to go do, man. Go out there and start buying up inventory. Buy back your own inventory. It's like buying shares of your own stock when you're confident in it. Just go from some of the biggest resellers that are just popping out the newest unworn so-called watches and just start buying up your own inventory, run the serial numbers and see how recently those serial numbers were registered with you. Rolex, when you come across a serial number that was registered 1 or 2 years ago, okay, you've run into a guy who had a situation and he needed to sell his watch. Or maybe he just got tired of it and wanted to upgrade. Nothing wrong with that. You are allowed to sell your own property. Okay, but when Rolex, you're going to come up with a lot of serial numbers that hit the internet for sale this week and were registered at the AD last week. And when patterns emerge, this particular AD is all over Chrono. And Rolex, come on. How come you're not doing this? How are you not? Why are you not doing this? It's important for you to do this, and I'm going to tell you the reason why. The good AD. So many of these ADs are good, but like honestly, I know you collectors like me watching this video right now, you're angry, and a lot of you are going to say there are no good ADs, they're all in cahoots, and that's just absolutely not true. There are a lot of ADs who are playing by the rules. They're the good guys. And nobody would like to see the Rolex perversion, okay? The Rolex backdoor, the Rolex deal, the wheeling, the dealing. Nobody would like to see the gray market get reined in more than the good AD. And I'll tell you why. Because they are struggling on a constant basis to sell watches to people that they trust. See, they are really worried that they're going to get caught up in selling a watch to somebody who flips it, because the Rolex will come down on them for that. They're pretty worried about that. And Rolex is an important line to them. So they're worried they'll lose the line. And therefore they're cautious. And in fact, this doesn't even come from my AD or any specific AD. I've heard the same thing from multiple ADs all around the world. In most locations, Rolex is communicating with the AD and telling them, be careful people, sell to guys you know, who will love the watch, who will keep the watch, who will not flip the watch. We want you to sell to customers, end users, but sell to people that you trust. Now, if you have already bought over the years a couple of watches from an AD and you still have them, then you should wear them into the AD. Hey, look, see this? I bought it 4 years ago from you guys, and I still love it. Thank you so much for selling me this. Can I get the new whatever it is? Can you put me on a list for that? And I think your chances are really decent, because what the AD is less likely to do is Joe Random walks in, or worse yet, emails or calls. Because man, phone calls and emails, they're getting hundreds of those per week that they have to respond to. The guy who shows up in the store, a lot more likely to get some personal attention. But anyway, that guy who shows up and he says, you know, I know you don't know me, I've never bought anything, but I want a Panda. Well, they're going to be afraid to sell that guy a Panda. And not only that, they got 50 people asking for a Panda. And of those 50, probably 25 are customers that they've known for years. And so they're going to want to try and take care of those people first. So my advice is that, A, if you have never bought anything from an AD, start visiting, pick one. If I were you guys, I would search out family-owned operations versus corporate-owned. This is just me. I can't even tell you why I'm saying this. I just got my reasons. But I think that you want to look for a company-owned location, and some of these families own 2 or 3 locations, but that's relatively small compared to the corporate operators who may own 10, 15, 20 different locations. You want to find a family-operated jewelry store, and you want to go on in there, and you want to go in with some regularity. Don't be a pest, don't call, don't email, just show up. Figure out when they're not going to be busy, and that's when you want to go, and you want to express your interest. You want to introduce yourself. You want to tell them, I know it's very difficult for you to sell anybody a Rolex right now, especially somebody you don't know. Tell them that. But I'm going to be coming around here every few months just to remind you that I love this watch, and I would really love to be able to buy it. And I hope someday that you might call me. And once you've done that, I'll be able to show you that watch in 1, 2, 3, 4 years, and then I think you'll want to sell me another one at that point. So I'm just here to introduce myself and get started. Guys, this is what I think that you should do. Should you have to? No. Is it ridiculous? A little. Are you going to be irritable about this advice I'm giving you? Probably. And the reason is that when you have thousands of dollars in your hand, in your checkbook, on your card to swipe, I mean, should you have to jump through hoops in order to buy? No. Honestly, you shouldn't. But the fact that Rolex in Geneva, of the ADs, the whole community of ADs, that they let half of them sell out the back door while the other half is struggling to meet all the rules. It's always harder to play by the rules, guys. It's always harder. It's usually less profitable, but there's a lot of ADs going to AD heaven, and your job is to find those. My best advice is you find the smaller family-owned operation, because there's family opening and closing that store. They have their multiple generations of their family, pride and integrity invested into that location. It's not like some corporate thing with some vice president who's in this week and out next week. I mean, there's the longevity of family, and that's really where you want to go. People who scoff at you, you should leave and you should go somewhere else. People who are nice to you and apologetic and real, like, sorry, you can't do that now. You just tell them, no worries. My job is to convince you over time that I'm a trustworthy person, because I know you have a problem, and the problem is you got everybody asking you for the same thing. And how do you know the flipper from the real deal? I'm the real guy, and I want to prove that to you. That's what I did with James & Sons. I have sent people there over the years, and I don't mean to make this a commercial for them. There are hundreds of guys like this around the country, and your job is to find one. A lot of them are starting to get a little bit more inventory, so it's actually a pretty good time. I feel like Rolex is starting to increase inventory shipments a little bit. But Rolex, what you people need to do is to start buying your own inventory, checking serial numbers, and get rid of these bad ADs. Bad ADs, you're not going to stop. There's too much money in it. I get it. Good ADs, thank you so much. You really are the life's blood of the watch community, and I don't know what to say other than I really appreciate the good work that you are doing. Now, you, the viewer, I want you to please subscribe to my channel, hit the like button on this, and remember something. There is a good AD out there. You just need to find them, and you need to understand that supply is really low, so it's a long game. It's not a short game. If you stay in the game, it took me years, but if you stay in the game, I think you can get a good watch too. Just start with something a little easier, a Daytona or a Submariner. or even an OP in the bright blue or gray or black. Those are more obtainable watches, and that's where you should start. Thank you for having joined me. Long ramble, I guess, but really I appreciate your time. Goldberg. Peace out.